Okay, so time for our next panel discussion. So the discussion would be on families across generations bridging the gap, and we have all our panelists over here. So I'll just take a minute to introduce all of them. This panel would be moderated by Ms. Sonu Bhasin, the business author and editor-in-chief of the Fab magazine. Ms. Sonu Bhasin is one of the early and senior women professionals in the industry. In her career of over 30 years, she has set up and managed large businesses and diverse teams across financial and non-financial sectors in India and overseas. Ms. Bhasin has led various businesses in senior leadership positions during her corporate career. She began as a Tata Administrative Service Officer with the Tata Group and spent 13 years with the group before becoming a banker. As a banker, she was a director at ING Bearings, president Axis Bank, group president at Yes Bank before going back to the Tatas as COO of Tata Capital Limited. Currently, she is an independent director on boards of companies including Whirlpool, Vodafone Mobile Services, Mahindra First Choice Services, Transcorp International, Sutlej Textiles, Max Specialty Films, and PNB MetLife Insurance. She is on the advisory boards of Dharma Life and Executive Access India. She now focuses on family businesses and is the founder of FAB, which is Families and Business, a platform for family business owners that works towards creating awareness of matters of family, which when overlooked or not addressed can bring down running businesses. Today, Mr. Sonu Bhasin is the editor of Families and Business, India's only standalone dedicated magazine that targets multi-generational family businesses in India and overseas. Her book, The Inheritors, Stories of Entrepreneurship and Success, published by Penguin Random House, has been released in October 2017. The foreword for the book has been written by Anand Mahindra. The Inheritors is a behind-the-scene look at the business families that own and control some of the most prominent and big Indian business houses. The stories of each business and its owner focus on the culture, family politics, business rivalries, and ego battles within each family. Overall, the Inheritors is a celebration of the entrepreneurial spirit of the family business owners. Introducing our next panelist, Mr. Rishabh Shroff, who is a partner of Cyril Amachan Mangaldas. Mr. Rishabh Shroff is a part of corporate team and co-heads private client practice of the firm. He advises on foreign investments into India, private mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, insurance and property or real estate transactions. He also specializes in family constitutions and settlements, trusts, wills, and succession planning. He is a solicitor, Supreme Court of England and Wales, and a core member of the firm's Japan desk. He was awarded the Private Client Lawyer of the Year 2015, which is an award by the Asian Lawyer in November 2015. He is also a recipient of 40 Under 40 Rising Star awarded by Legal Era in 2016. Our next panelist, Mr. Ravi Soni, the co-founder of Observe and family member of Sony Marvels Group. Mr. Ravi Soni co-founded the newfangled company, Observe, which is dedicated to empowering brands to create a sustainable digital growth by personalizing the consumer brand experience. Born in a millennial family, he gave way to his avidity and chose the path of building an unconventional and inspiring organization from the scratch. Hence, Observe was founded in 2013 with an impactful vision that implements ideas that are beyond the obvious. Observe is one of the youngest vendors of the World Bank and has led the digital transformation of their initiatives in India. Driven by the force of technology and creativity, it follows a unique model of the triangular wheel for leveraging the hidden digital potential for a diverse set of brands. Mr. Soni enjoys nurturing and growing with budding entrepreneurs and enthusiastically sharing his holistic approach towards digital marketing. He is one of the distinctive founder charter members of TIE, a global entrepreneurship organization, where he takes active responsibility in cultivating a thriving and ever-growing entrepreneurial ecosystem in Udaipur and now in New Delhi. An alumnus of the Indian Institute of Technology of Delhi with specialization in artificial intelligence, he is ardent towards bringing a positive impact to the world. So welcoming our next panelist, Mr. Shan Chopra, the managing partner of the Chopra's group. Mr. Shan Chopra is a young entrepreneur and executive leading the strategic transition of a leading education group to leap the business into future. After boarding in Sydney at Knox Grammar, a leading private boarding school, Mr. Shan went on to study economics at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom, followed by Economics and Strategy at Imperial College London. An inspiring and passionate leader at 24, Mr. Chopra had the opportunity to acquire exposure in private equity and strategy consulting with a focus on emerging markets during his time in London before joining the forces with his family to lead the strategic vision and transformation of the education group founded and built by his parents, Mr. Naveen and Natasha Chopra, over 23 years. Mr. Chopra and the executive leadership team are leading the change and growth curve of the organization and are aggressively evolving and diversifying the operating model. Thank you so much. You may please continue with the panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. I'm actually very happy to be here and very happy to be going to be in conversation with 3 young inheritors. And just to set the context for the panel, I know that all of you deal with high net worth individuals, and a lot of them are family business owners and promoters. I don't know how many of you in the audience are promoters or family business owners yourselves. Are there any of you here by a show of hands? Oh, good. Good. But for the rest of you, you do deal with your clients who are, some of them are promoters and family business owners. I focus in the area of family businesses, and the way that I look at family businesses, I call them the unsung heroes of the Indian economy. And the reason I do that is because we know that family businesses are all around us, but we don't actively acknowledge the contribution that they make to the Indian economy. And when you look at any statistics and you look at and you think of your clients or yourselves, they are the largest contributors to the GDP of the country. They are the largest employers outside of the government. They do not retrench people in times of, when others are retrenching. They provide employment. But we don't actually acknowledge their contribution. Look at another statistics, 90% of world commerce is in the hands of family owned businesses. 70% of all family businesses last only 1 generation. So just stop for a moment and think about this number. 90% of world commerce is in the hands of family owned businesses. 70% of them last only 1 generation. And the reason for this has very little to do with business, with the products, with the services, with ERP, with anything of that. The reason for this high drop off has to do with family dynamics. Succession planning, conflict, lack of corporate governance, unwillingness to bring in talented professionals are some of the reasons. But today as we sit here, we are not here to talk about family businesses and the reasons why they fail. We have here 3 people who represent the 2nd, 3rd and the 4th generation of very successful businesses. So these are actually part of that elite small percent of family business owners who last beyond 2, 3 and 4 generations. So today we are going to talk about family businesses, what keeps them ticking, and we are going to celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurship. And this is not a technical panel discussion at all. We are not going to talk numbers, we are not going to talk quant, we are not going to talk derivatives. It is going to be exploring what makes businesses tick, how does the new generation, the next gen, think of perpetuating their own family businesses, and we would actively encourage questions but at the end of the panel. So without further ado, let me just, and you've had their introduction, so let me just give you a bit of introduction. Rishabh here says that he works for a 100-year-old startup, right? So he's the 4th generation of Amarchand Mangaldas, but he's also a startup, but the startup is 100-year-old. Shan is 2nd generation of a business that actually shapes the future citizens of our country, and this is part of, you are actually part of the largest and the oldest education service group in India. Ravi, Soni is third generation.
Yeah.
Third generation. Very well established businesses of marble, granite, stones, jewelry.
Yes.
But he's chosen to break away and set up his own. So in one sense, he's part of a third generation business, but on the other, he's also a first gen. Okay. All of them have studied overseas. And my first question therefore too is to all of you, and we can take the answer one by one, is that you've all had a very privileged upbringing, privileged background. Yet you went overseas, you went out of your comfort zone and you studied. You studied in the UK, Rishabh. Shan, you studied in Australia and UK, and Ravi, you came from Udaipur to Delhi.
Yeah.
What was it like stepping out of your comfort zone, and how was that experience? Was there any time that you called up home and said, Mom, I want to come back, I can't take this? Anyone?
Who wants to go first? Okay,
Start, sir.
I'll start off. Thank you, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks, Soni, for the introduction and the brief. I guess I actually went out quite early. I was booted out at 13. And a large part of the reason was because, you know, I'd seen my family sort of build this business from the very beginning. And I've been with them throughout that journey. So, you know, I wasn't always a part of a privileged background. And I think that's helped me and the family keep fairly grounded as well. But it was necessary for us to make the change because as, you know, once you do get a strong foundation in place in India, things get quite easy. You know, you've got a very sort of natural ecosystem that develops around you in terms of the help that you have, the support that you have. And for kids who are, you know, wanting to be able to establish themselves, build credibility, have a strong journey ahead, I think it's very important for them to be able to step outside of that because it's just too comfortable. So that's exactly what happened with me. I was booted to a all-white, you know, private boarding school in Australia. I was the only brown kid there. It was a very tough transition, although we did have a base in Sydney established already there. I was born in Sydney as well. And the first year was incredibly hard, but I think, you know, to a large extent, the man that I am today, the things that I'm doing have been pretty much shaped by the foundation I got at boarding in Sydney. Yeah. Because it just challenges everything that you know. There's no family. It's like you got to establish your independent credibility. And the Aussies are very tough, you know. And I'm not very fit now given my hours, but you know, Oz is a culture where if you're not physically active, you know, if you're not excelling at sports, you're not going to be accepted in society. So it's a very tough culture that way. And it was a massive change from, you know, what we're used to in India, where, you know, schools really lack the infrastructure to build children who, you know, are very active physically, and, you know, people really focus on academics. So it's a well-balanced study, and I think that pretty much shaped the foundation.
Yeah. And Rishabh, I remember you saying that the first thing that hit you was the terrible weather.
Yeah, so my journey is actually
You used a stronger word, which I'm not using.
the not so polite company word for that. But my journey is very similar to what we were saying now, that I also went abroad when I just turned 13, I think a week or two after my 13th birthday. So, and also went to pretty much an all-white UK boarding school. I was the only Indian kid over there and the only vegetarian kid in my batch as well. So it was quite a learning journey for the school as well to sort of accommodate people like me. My batchmates were from China, from UK, Europe, France, places like that. So, and I also went at a time, sometime in '99, when I think my parents realized that the economy is sort of blossoming, it's opening up, we are seeing more action coming in from all over the world. So having a pure Indian kind of upbringing, a pure Indian kind of mindset, didn't really fit into the vision of the firm at that stage that we had about being a global platform and sort of competing with the best. So I think in hindsight, I think it's good that I went abroad when I did. Sort of I spent close to about 9 years abroad, 5 years in boarding school, and then 3 years in UK law school, followed by a little bit of internships and all over there. So I think that whole journey really helped me really open my mind to really what's possible, what's happening globally, what best practices can we bring back to India when I went for my internships and sort of working with the best UK firms over there. So I think it's a very fascinating learning journey that we are doing now, and also sort of applying it to my own kid as well. Right now I have a 7-month-old, so I'm definitely going to send my kid abroad for boarding school. It's a big fight I have with my wife on that every day, but I think the long-term plan is to have a global education for, I think, everybody that that is possible.
Yeah. And Ravi, you started a little late. You did spend school in Udaipur, and then you came to IIT Delhi.
So actually,
So were you better prepared?
so I left home in 10th. I went to Kota first and that's what I memorized when I look back. So it was a different journey for me. Somehow I didn't enjoy the luxury of my family before that. And when I came to IIT, I'm sure IIT Delhi hostels, now they have improved a lot. But at that time we didn't even had the ACs or the coolers as well. And in the heat of Delhi, and even we were not allowed at that time to have AC or something. So yeah, it was a different thing, not at all a comfort zone for me. But yeah, I enjoyed the luxury of education at that time and the kind of learning we were having at that time. But if I look back then, one incident I could share about when I joined Flipkart and my father said that, okay, you are going to buy your first car. So you can choose whatever car you want to buy, but there's a condition. Okay, what's the condition? Say that you should not buy a car better than the CEO of the company. So, and it was a startup at the time. So I think that was the way he was teaching me that, okay, how to be on the ground, away from the comfort zone, in the reality.
Yeah.
I think
So-
one thing that strikes you over there, sorry, is that how sharp the Indian focus is on family business. Because I was just looking back in hindsight now, the kind of backgrounds all my friends and all came from there. I think there was nobody wanted to join their own family business back in their country, even sort of some Indian kids who joined later back to India. I think India is very unique in some of the generational focus that we have on the family business and sort of returning back to it. I think there the spirit is sort of do your own thing, be your own man, sort of get into doing something different away from your parents and sister and all. I think Indians are sort of very sort of dedicated and committed to this whole mindset of that, which is I think our strength in this space as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to balance out the two kind of dynamics
Yeah.
when you apply it back.
Yeah. So interesting that you say that a lot of the Indians choose to come back and be part of the family business. Two of you did, Ravi, you didn't.
Yeah.
But the two of you, you've come and you are doing things differently. You are focusing on areas that maybe your fathers did not focus on. Can you share with us some of the things that you have done differently based on the learnings that you had outside of the home?
Why don't you take up this time?
Sure. So, well, a couple of things. So, we as a law firm, sort of people say that we're sort of stuck in the old world mentality, sort of law firms are all dusty books and leather covers and things like that. So, I think the first thing I want to do when I come back was sort of help modernize our outlook and modernize the kind of stuff we do. So, typical next gen coming back, sort of ideas from UK and wherever and just sort of opening the platform up. What I've been doing in the last couple of years is a few things. One is basically setting up this family business vertical that we're speaking about now. That about 10 years ago, we had nobody focusing in a dedicated way on succession, governance, wills, trust, sort of family offices. We didn't have anybody in the firm doing that. So when I joined the firm in 2007, we sort of set up a team looking at this on a more systematic long-term basis, sort of the legal side of it, the practical side, industry knowledge, things like that. So we built it from the ground up 10 years ago. And separately also mentioned the Japan desk. So before in the firm, it was more of an ad hoc approach about approaching different geographies. Now over the last 10 years, again, sort of built a very dedicated, systematic team looking at the market, going there frequently, having a single point of contact on that, building credibility over these last 10 years over there. So I think both sectors need a very dedicated and long-term focus towards it, not something you can do whenever you're free, something like that.
Right.
So I thought NextGen can do a lot more of that. Also on the, you can say the non-revenue side, so doing a lot of things helping digitize what the firm is doing right now. So I look after our firm's blog. We only got it about 2 years ago. Our firm's Twitter page, sort of helping put in place a new industry line, not industry line, more of a new alternative business line we're setting up a legal tech incubator fund within the law firm as well. So combining sort of our work on startups, on investment structures, on various things about getting into the investment advisory side on legal tech startups.
Right.
So it's a completely new line of business for the firm.
Right. And you are focusing on revitalizing
Right.
your business.
Right. I mean, I think, just on what we were just sort of saying earlier as well, I mean, our civilization, as my father says, we're not a country, a civilization. It's so inclusive that when you're growing up in a family business environment, you're pretty much going to discuss business all the time. So that exposure pretty much builds you for that, and that's why a lot of family businesses and next generations end up joining their business as well. So that access to that level of intellectual capital really shapes your future to a large extent as well. I think for me, because I pretty much was glued into the business from the very beginning as well. I saw what it took, the main ingredients to build a successful business in the space that we've done. We're in a very unorganized space. It's a fairly dirty market in many ways. And private companies like ours have to self-regulate and actually set standards for others too. So we've done that. But when you're a market leader and you're in that position for a long time, you tend to get lazy and sort of incompetent in some ways too. And I think those were my observations from the very beginning. And our entire project has been around, as you're saying, revitalizing the company. For me, talent was a big one because, having worked with people that were very bright, having studied environments where you had, very bright people, I always wanted to surround myself with people that are better than I am. And I think that was a philosophy that was different to what our business was running with, which I saw as an individualized, pretty much limitation to being able to institutionalize the business. And the absence of institutionalization, in my view, pretty much prevents you from being able to achieve your full potential. So, human capital, there's several dimensions to what we're doing in the business, but human capital has been a big one. Technology is the other, because we also see limited longevity in the business that we're in. I think in the age of information intelligence that we're living in, our clients need a lot more sophisticated tools for us to be able to truly support them in building the future.
Right.
So technology is another big dimension. But ultimately, from being able to build a strong leadership backbone to thinking about what is the right strategic direction of the business, these are all ideas that in some way, shape, or form have been influenced by my own upbringing, my own life, and then just a great collaborative spirit in which we work.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people in the audience deal with people like yourselves and maybe even your parents.
Yeah.
And for them to understand the dynamics between the patriarchs and the inheritors, I think it's going to help them understand their clients better.
Right.
So from that perspective, you as the inheritors, in your opinion, and let me start with Ravi first, we'll work our way here.
Yeah.
What in your opinion are the expectations that your father has of you? And related to that is, do you see it as a burden or do you see it as a guidance?
In terms of expectations, there could be two.
According to you, I'm sure that,
Yeah.
I mean, even my parents, even today, have expectations of me, right? So from you, what I want to understand, vis-a-vis family business,
Yeah.
what are the expectations that your father has of you? And do you see it as a burden or do you see it as a guiding principle?
So, considering me as a person, my father has a couple of expectations from me. The first expectation he always had from me is that be like an elephant, don't like a.
Be sorry?
Always be as an elephant and less as a rat. That's what he tells me every day. Whenever it comes to money, when it comes to fame, for anything, whatever you do. The second thing, no doubt he wants me back to the family business. He wants me to lead that business and grow that as well. No doubt they are the different, like the two ends of different poles. I am doing digital and the second is the mining. But somehow he does expect me. Let me share an incident. I was doing exercise where someone asked me to write that what do you want to do in next 10 years. So I wrote a couple of things. I want to have a luxury brand, I want to do this, I want to do that. So I came back home and I did the same exercise with my father as well. And there was a question in that exercise that what do you need in that? So my father said that, okay, I need you back. That's the expectation he has from me.
And do you see that as a burden or do you see it as a guidance?
So I do get a shivering in my body whenever I think that. I don't see it as a burden, I see it as a responsibility for me.
As a responsibility. Okay. Shan,
But-
sorry.
sometimes because it's like in my blood. Today also when I came to this place, I was checking out the marble only. That okay, this is something good. There was some piece just in the front of whenever you the moment you enter the gate, there's a inlay over there. So I could figure out okay how they have made it. It has all the kind of marbles across the globe. So I do love that. But yeah, so I see that more as a responsibility for me, not as a burden for me.
Yeah. Shan, what is the expectations and is it a burden?
I mean, my father is very demanding in many ways.
Everybody's father
You
is.
know,
I'm sure.
I don't think
He's
there's any father
I
who's
think
not
he's
demanding.
excessively demanding in many ways, but you know, we're completely, you know, our goals are, you know, incongruous. So, you know, I guess the expectations really are around values. You know, he and the family as a whole, there's certain values that we live by. You know, we're honest individuals. We run our company and operation with the highest of integrity. We've cared for our people. You know, we've tried to, you know, pretty much always, you know, enhance the ability to foresee and the perspectives that we gather in making decisions. So, I mean, I think I also am someone who's very ambitious and passionate, and I like to set expectations and, you know, build that on myself and rely on others. And I think, given the product that we are, you know, as the next generation of family businesses, we've been provided the platform to do that. I often say to people, because when we're hiring professionals who are far more experienced than I am, and I say, look, I have an unfair advantage, right? But this unfair advantage pretty much enables me to shape the future of the people that are coming in here. And I think it's to recognize that. I think it's, you know, the expectations have always been around recognize the position that you're in, and, you know, use that as an influence to positively impact the world around you. So, you know, we're just, it's fairly simple, straightforward, but, you know, there are certain non-negotiables. You know, for instance, he's, from the very beginning, told me, you know, there's 24 hours in a day, you know, 8 hours, you know, most of us are sleeping. I don't, but in general. And that's a third of your life, pretty much. Then you need 2-3 hours for, you know, here and there. And then what you do with the 14 or 15 hours you got left is what's going to pretty much shape you. What's going to be, you know, it's going to decide the man that you are. And so, you know, I mean, those kinds of messages pretty much stay with you from the very beginning. And the expectations, you know, are to fulfill your potential.
Right. Rishabh?
So one thing as lawyers we like doing is changing the question to suit what we want to answer. So I'm going to change your question to the expectations that the father has from the next gen. So as you know, in our business, I have both my sister involved in the business. She is part of Ahmedabad office, and also my wife in the business. We also have my mom as well.
As your mom as well.
As my mom as well. Yeah. So we are a very women-dominated family, plus also a firm generally. So if you look in terms of the broader context, what my dad expects from me, my sister and my wife, I think he's left it to us in two parts. One is to figure out how we want to be part of the business in the long term together. So it's not what I want to do, it's what we will do as a pair across the three of us. So what is the co-leadership model that we have in the next gen? So it's not going to be the replica of my dad's model of sole managing partner, but how the three of us are going to be involved in governance and leadership of the firm in a collaboratively agreed way. So he's left it to us as the next gen to figure out how we want to do it, not a top-down kind of prescriptive model given to us. So like Shan was saying, the eggs in the ground in sort of certain non-negotiables in that way. So those will be the guiding principles around which we build a leadership model, but it's left to us to implement what we want to do. And the second part is, we see the firm analogy basically as two wheels of a bicycle. So you've got the founder family and the non-founder family. So what we're going to sort of do as the next phase in evolution is to figure out what's the new balance after my father's sort of time is, he's going to retire or whatever happens next, about how we want to work with the non-founder family in that way. So because as a family, we're only 4 people in a business of 600 people. So what is the right level of involvement, founder family, non-founder family, governance, rights, ownership, control, things like that, how we work with the non-founder family as well. So that's going to be a sort of 8-year plan from now on how this whole thing rolls out. So the expectation is that you will give me the answer and we will implement it in his lifetime, in his tenure, about how we want to roll it out.
Okay, great.
I would like to add one point. For my father always tell me that you should have a work-life balance.
You know, you need to put your mic up because I think, can everybody hear him?
Okay.
Can you hear him? Yeah, I think you need to speak
Sorry,
into the
guys.
mic.
So,
Yeah.
one expectation my father has is a work-life balance. He always, uh, he always tells me that you work rigorously for 7 days. So I want you to manage your time. I am taking the point from Shan that in your 7 days, put 4 days to your business, 2 days to explore new avenues because now you have completed more than 5 years and you have a well-established layer B in your company, and 1 day for your wife. So there should be like family time. There should be 2 days where you are focusing on either work on the business, not in the business, and explore new avenues, and the rest 4 days in your business.
Yeah.
That's all.
So one thing is there, and I think all of you who deal with family businesses, you know that women are typically kept away from the core business of the family. Shan and Rishabh here belong to families that are really an exception to that. So keeping that in mind, I've asked you about the expectations that your fathers have of you. What are the expectations that your moms have of you?
So at least in our case, they both speak in the same voice in that way. So, my mother is my boss, my mentor, my confidant, whatever it is. And we sit about like 10 feet apart from each other in the office and doing it for my whole career in that way. So there's a blurred boundary. There's no blurred boundary. It's pretty much one sort of whole about how I treat my mom as a business partner, how I treat my mom as my mom in that way. So she has been sort of the driving force of my career choices, the journeys I've made, the kind of choices I have done, and sort of that would be the intellectual side. I think my mom gives me the softer emotional side about what you should be as a person getting into the business and working with professionals, outside people like that. So she's been sort of the fulcrum of the whole thing in that way. So
Okay.
we can't imagine a firm without her.
Without, okay. Shan?
Yeah, I mean, I often say that, a man can't truly achieve his potential without a great relationship with a mother. I personally feel, because my relationship with my mother is great, and I know the impact of also people that don't have a very good relationship with their mother. For you to be a strong leader, I mean, the job that a woman is doing from the very beginning is that of a leader, whether she's at home or in the workplace. And in fact, the studies done on how women will be great entrepreneurs, and that's why women are really successful in the professional space too. So I think, there is this, of course, there's again, in the value system and the rest of this tremendous alignment, but beyond that, it's also the fact that, women are great nurturers. I've seen my mother nurture, I've seen my mother, do things that others wouldn't. And I think that builds a strong foundation for leadership. And so, and that's what leadership is about, right? Being able to inspire people, being able to nurture them, work with them on the future goals and objectives, helping them achieve their full potential. These are all things that a mother's doing with their sons.
Right.
Just to build on my earlier answer, also just like how Shan was saying, she's a nurturer for the entire firm as well. So she's also the reason why, as a firm, even today across 650 lawyers, we're about 60% women in that way. So we have no special policy for women. It just so happens that we create the meritocracy, the culture in which sort of women can enter and thrive to all the way up to heading departments, to heading kind of practice lines. So
Yeah.
I think she has been sort of the engine driving that whole thing to where it is now. And she sort of becomes their de facto mom when they come to the firm. And most people's parents live in sort of different parts of the world. They sort of coming in from smaller cities into Bombay, and sort of they're alone in the city, sort of as a professional, late hours in office, no chance to meet people outside who you work with in the office.
Lawyers
on,
spend only 8 hours in the office?
No, they 8 hours when you sort of in transit, you can also
Yeah.
bill for that as well. So you sort of live and die in the office in that way. So your sort of mentor, your people look up to, would in a way happens to be my mom in that case. So,
Right.
so when people get married, the first wedding card goes to my mom outside the family. So
Right.
that connection that people build with the mom
Right.
in the office. So it's a very
Right.
special relationship they have.
Right.
So for me, I think many of us will have a similarity on this one. So my mother is a housewife, and she proudly says that I have a degree where I have made 3 engineers and 1 IIT, and that's what she excels in her as well. And one expectation she has from me is she wants me to grow. Today also, when she must have seen this this conference posted somewhere on the Facebook wall, she would have felt really happy. She would have shared in her network as well. Secondly, she's a great support, as he said. I can't be moving forward without her support. I realized a situation when I was moving from Udaipur to Delhi. It was very difficult for me to leave my home and come to Delhi and stay here for my future growth. But surprisingly, my mother motivated me the most. She said that it's perfectly fine. Your grandparent come from that place to this place. Your father came to Udaipur, and now you are going to Delhi. I just have one expectation from you, that be happy wherever you are and keep my daughter-in-law happy.
Right. Yeah. Now, since we're in a room full of people who deal with wealth of high net worth individuals and promoters and family business owners, each one of you, what is your relationship with wealth? And take a moment to think about it. Do you see wealth differently from what your father did, from what your grandfather did? How do you see wealth, and how do you see your wealth as part of your life? Is it an integral part? Is it something you take for granted? Is it something, what is the value around wealth?
Who wants to go? Okay, I'll
Shan, you're the
this is
youngest,
the most
so
controversial one.
everybody is taking
This is
advantage
the
of
most
that.
Advantage of that.
Yeah.
Look, I think we have to be pretty much upfront about this. People who are, sort of inheritors, as you titling. There's a great sense of entitlement that develops, and I guess that's probably the most dangerous thing that can happen, because what happens with people, and I pretty much laugh at this, is that the things that make you successful, when you become successful, you stop doing.
You stop it.
No, they have a tendency, right? You have a tendency to stop doing pretty much those behavioral attributes that made you successful, that allowed you to build the wealth. When you become wealthy, you have a tendency to sort of lack self-worth. And this especially happens when you've been brought up in an environment that's already established. In my case, I've had the privilege of not having that. Is that I saw my family build from the ground up. My father had many ventures throughout his life, and he, has had many failures, like all great entrepreneurs do. He was 40 years old when he started this business. They'd moved from Sydney, come into India due to a number of reasons. And, we started out in a small flat in Sierra Park in Delhi, and, there was no aircon, no TVs, no cars, no nothing. So I've seen that happen when I was a kid. I remember sitting outside on the balcony, not being able to get sleep because it was so hot, and my mother used to, just have me in the shoulders and be using those Chinese fans, we used to call them. So I think as you grow older and you see that support system around you, you see wealth around you, you being able to travel where you want, buy what you want, all those sorts of things. There is a sense of entitlement that happens, and you tend to think, I'm special, that's why I deserve it, but it's not like that. So I see myself as a custodian of what's been developed. I see money and wealth as an instrument of change. I think that there's only that many seats in this world on the table, and to be able to get one of the seats so that you can put forth your perspective on how things should be managed, you need to be able to accumulate a lot of capital. And capital accumulation happens over time, compounds over generations. All businesses, all great businesses stand the test of time, and they do that by having the right value system. Right. So, I think the key is to recognize the unfair advantage that you've been put in, because there's many people out there that, had they received the same opportunities, they would have been different too. At the end of the day, when we're sitting up on the stage, I'm 25, I'm not even 25 yet, and I'm doing things that people haven't done when they're 50, 60 years old. I'm a global citizen. I travel where I want, when I want, and that's only because of the family I was born in. I haven't done anything else. So I think
so you say that you look at yourself as the custodian
Yeah,
of the wealth.
Absolutely, I see myself as a custodian of what's been built, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that's been given to myself and my sister and my family, the position that we're in, and I think. I think that the job for us is to be able to, continue compounding that over time, having a positive impact on the people that come into our lives, and build businesses that truly have positive externalities.
Right.
And I think we're in a business space that allows us to do that, so that's great.
Right. Rishabh, 100-year-old startup?
Good question. So it might be slightly different in a professional services context as opposed to a sort of more traditional industry, in that in professional services there's a direct correlation about the kind of work you do and the kind of returns you generate. So we have no factories, we have no IP, we have no that. So you are the income engine of the firm. What you do in office every day, the kind of work you put in, the direct correlation to what the firm earns and sort of the ultimate bottom line of the company. So sort of given that we've created this wealth over time by sort of sweat, blood and tears and the hard work of the family in that way. So that's created a very conservative approach to how we look at wealth. We don't sort of take out more from the business than we need to in a way for a sort of ongoing requirements. Most of the money sits in a trust we have. We don't take that much foam apart from what the business generates. So we take a very conservative, prudent approach to wealth. It's not to enjoy by the families, like Shan was saying, it's more for generation in the future to enjoy the compounded wealth and return all that comes. We don't go to stock markets, we don't invest in mutual funds, we sort of a very conservative approach.
You've just broken 1 million hearts, Sarah.
So,
you don't invest in mutual funds, you don't go to the stock market.
Conflict of interest as lawyers to most of listed companies, we can't get involved into insider trading issues and all that. So we take a very conservative approach, at least on the family's wealth how we treat it, that's one thing. Then sort of across the partnership, across the firm, we take a slightly more light touch approach, but same philosophy about not getting into equities and things like that. So sort of wealth is more sort of a passive thing to keep on the side, you let a family office run it, but you sort of focus on the income part and you get the money going and let somebody else look after what comes out of it.
Right. And Ravi?
I think for me, so wealth is on the lines of what my family think, but slightly differently. So the first thing, wealth, no doubt in terms of the value and the money what we have. So my family has a perception that you should invest into things which are tangible, like assets like building properties and all the kind of things. And I bring a different point of view to the table. I will say that, okay, no, let's invest in mutual funds. So recently there was an argument or not an argument, it's more of a discussion with my father and other people that we should invest in crypto, we should invest in bitcoins, those kind of things as well. And they were all against me. No, you will see even Warren Buffett said that it's like going to die and all the things, so we should not do this. Along with that, so yeah, for me, wealth is investing in future, investing in new avenues. I'm very aggressive on investing in startups and new ideas to bet upon something which I think could really change the impact of the world. Secondly, in terms of values, no doubt, wealth is value for me. I have to live those values because that's how nothing is sustainable, I think. It's about what you live can be only considered as sustainable in terms of time. The third thing could be what impact you're bringing to the world is a wealth for me.
Yeah, okay. So what I find very heartening is that each one of you do not take wealth for granted. You have a conservative approach, you think of yourself as a custodian, and the thought is to use the wealth that you have and use it to work for the future generations,
yes.
Right? So on this note, we're going to end our conversation. I don't know how we're doing on time and if there's time for questions, if anybody has any questions. Can we? 1 or 2 questions, if there are. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a fantastic session and for sharing so freely with an audience like this. I think it's really terrific. And great to hear another Australian accent in the room, Shan, and to hear your experiences of Australia. Question in terms of some decision making within the family. So,
can you hear?
No, I can't.
Can
I'm
you
struggling
speak
a little bit.
little
If you could
louder,
just,
please?
you can speak up a little bit.
Sure,
Apologies.
how's that?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Can you
Yeah,
hear me
that's
okay?
good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So question around decision making in the family. So
Right.
if you wanted to start a completely different venture from the core business of the family, and I think some of you may have already done that, Does your family support that in what ways does your family support that? Do they support that in a financial way? And in that case, how does that decision-making process look within your family group structure? Thank you.
Is that a question for anyone in particular or for Shan?
Anyone who'd like to comment, particularly for Shan, but the other two gentlemen as well.
Okay. So, you know, we're a sort of in a period of transition right now as a company that we are, and you know, a lot of the work that we're doing is around organizational structure, design, board level governance, and all sorts. As far as starting, you know, making decisions on starting new businesses or doing something different where the business goes, I think it's all got to be rationalized, and the case has got to be presented with evidence, with data, in front of the key members of the family, as well as any outside consultants that we have. You know, I personally am very focused and devoted to the business. My entire time is in the business, and we've got a very, you know, long-term strategy to evolve the business over time. I'm not looking to deviate into anything that isn't core, isn't providing us the ecosystem that we're already developed, or extending it for the consumers that we already have. And so, you know, all decisions have to be taken in a collaborative manner. You've got to rationalize the capital and the time and the energy that's going to go in, because you can only focus your resources into so many things at once. And so, as long as you see a positive return, you know, that's both tangible and intangible from what you're presenting, and there's hard data and evidence to back it, you know, we can move forward with things. But, you know, I personally am not in a space to do completely unrelated things right now. You know, we're very focused on what we're doing, and there's a long way to go for me. I don't know if you guys have any other comments on this.
So, for me, it was slightly different.
You know, take it out and because I can't hear you.
For me, it was slightly different.
Much better.
So, I went to my family and said that I want to pursue my dreams. But that's what I really want to do. And they said, okay, you have money, you want to take money, you can take money. You want to pursue something, do it. So it was very easy for me to pursue a totally new thing, which is nowhere connected with what my family is doing right now. And it was pretty easy for me. So I think the family members are very open to that mindset. And they also believe that doing something different will bring a new avenue to the family business as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a quick answer also from our side, that two parts to it. First is that with a clear policy in the next gen and in the family that we will not do something outside the legal services space. So in case somebody wants to do something, they have to sort of be aligned with what the firm is doing generally. So like I mentioned, the legal sort of incubator fund. So along the law services line, but not a complete new industry or vertical or something.
Yeah.
And then secondly, in terms of decision making, so as a legal structure, we are a partnership, not a company or LLP or something. So we can sort of create the governance mechanism as we want. And what we have right now is a very, like you were saying, you were a startup earlier, so like a very empowered startup founder in that way, single leader model. Decision making is very centralized, one person decides, and then sort of implemented across the firm as sort of required, along with very broad-based consultation in that way. But there are no sort of hundreds of barriers to decision making. If we like something, we do it very quickly, even more nimble than a startup sometimes.
So I think it's all about goal congruence at the end of the day. You know, you got to be able to align with your family. If there's a broader group of people that see value in that decision, you're probably going to go forward with it.
Okay, I think we don't have more time, but we are going to be here. So at the breakout session, we could answer any questions. Just one plug that I want to do with the permission of Aditya. My book, The Inheritors, is there. Rishabh is part of that book. I ask all of you to go have a look at it. Please buy it. Rishabh will sign it. I will sign it. And thank you for being here. We enjoyed having this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers. Cheers. I appreciate it.